Hey everyone, Jeff C here. It is Friday, January the 3rd, and my god, is it ever frickin' cold in Montreal. Have we traded places with the Arctic? I don't know. Is the North Pole moved or something? I don't know. It's freezing cold. It's been so cold here for so long that, well, I can barely remember when it was nice outside. Well, it's not that bad, actually. You gotta dress warm. Anyways, I don't want to digress. I've got some news. First, I want to say that Greg is back. He's going to be. We actually did a podcast, which I haven't put up yet because I'm still restricted by 15 minutes, and it's far too hard for me to put up a 2.5 hour podcast and chop it up into 15-minute bits on the Free Radio Revolution channel. So I'm going to try to get around that. I'm also building a website, freeradiorevolution.com, which really has nothing as of yet. I'm very much a newbie at that, so a lot of learning, a lot of aches and pains to go with it. But that will be up, and when it's up and running and looks good enough, I'll be posting links for that. I'm also now on Google Plus, so any of you who want to add me to your friends list or circles, circle jerking, yeah, go right ahead. I'm gonna try to, I guess the old expression, if you can't beat them, join them. Well, I don't really want to join Google Plus, but I want YouTube to function the way it should, and I would very much like to be able to post longer videos. So I'm also trying to tackle that situation, which is the copyright strike. Anyway, so I'm going to come to you with news of the day here. And did Kim Jong Un feed his uncle to the dogs? Now, if those of you who have been following North Korea, I'm one of these guys that has always been fascinated with this delinquent, backward state, this crazy, probably the craziest place on earth, if you think about it, if you ever look at some of the videos that you can find on YouTube regarding Pyongyang, the city itself, the city that has no traffic, but has lots of traffic cops who are very animated even if there's no cars going by. But I don't want to digress on that. But his uncle was seen by insiders, at least American insiders, to be really the head of state and the go-to guy between China and North Korea. And many people were saying that Kim Jong Un was merely just a puppet and that his uncle was really running the show. Well, that is done now. Kim Jong Un has absolutely seized complete control of North Korea, and in a very brutal-like manner. He also killed, I believe it was his wife or his mistress. I mean, they're killing people all the time there. When we hear a story about uncle being fed to the dogs, it sounds like almost like Roman times, right? Caligula or something, right? Well, it wouldn't be surprising to me. Having studied a bit of North Korea and read quite a bit, seen a lot of videos, I can tell you that wouldn't surprise me in the least. Many of these people, millions of people in North Korea, have starved to death. Of course, the sanctions against the state don't exactly help, but when you have a totalitarian regime, you live in fear, constant fear all the time. So Kim Jong-il learned from his father, right, and Kim Jong-il, who learned from Kim Jong-sung, and they learned how to be a very wicked and brutal dictator, and so it doesn't surprise me. So here off the BBC, it sounds like something out of a Quentin Tarantino movie. Actually, it doesn't. Sound something even much darker. Rumors are flying that North Korean leader Kim Jong Un ordered his uncle Jan Song-thaek, I don't know how to pronounce that, and 5/8 executed by being stripped naked and placed in a cage with 120 dogs. Apparently, they starved the dogs for 5 days, and these were like big hunting dogs. Wow, isn't that brutal? This is all according to Malaysia Straits Times, so this is the source that is giving us, which quotes a 12th December story in the Chinese government-controlled paper Wen Wow Wen Wei Po. The horrifying report vividly depicted the brutality of the young North Korean leader. Ching Cheong writes in the Times. The fact that it appeared in a Beijing-controlled newspaper showed that China no longer cares about its relations with the Kim regime. Now, I don't know how serious China is in dealing with them. I mean, they have been the pretty much the only country that trades with North Korea. Although in the past, of course, there was North Korean links to places like Iran. The Guardian's Tim Stanley cautions that this story is tempting, probably too tempting to be true. The thing about North Korea is that it's so mad, so gruesome, that it's difficult not to believe whatever tall story you hear about, he writes. Kim Jong Un ate a baby. The army uses kittens for practice, target practice. Well, actually, they probably use old people. Kim Jong-il's reanimated corpse stalks the countryside, scaring children. Well, that would be something that they would perhaps tell youngsters to keep them in check. It all seems possible. He warns that it is important to look at the agendas of the people who are spreading the story. The Straits Times is a respectable and widely read publication, but it's often accused of being a mouthpiece of Singapore's ruling party and is staunchly anti-communist, so political bias is possible. Finally, we can't dismiss the possibility that China itself has fabricated or at least encouraged the story to send message to Pyongyang. Kim's uncle was the architect of closer economic ties between China and North Korea, and there is thought to be a lot of anger about his death. So that's interesting. This is off the BBC, so the fact that the BBC is actually, saying to use caution with this story is a little bit surprising. But nonetheless, it is true. There would be many reasons for the mainstream press, especially the Western press, or perhaps, as we said, Malaysian, Singapore, to really portray the Kim Jong Un regime as being absolutely barbaric. But, of course, if you look into North Korean recent history, it doesn't surprise me one bit that this type of treachery, this type of absolute insanity would be used. You're talking about people with Kim Jong-il, who is famous for having people executed in the most brutal ways. There are horror stories, unbelievable stories that would turn your stomach inside out. About children being brutalized, raped. Peasants, of course, are often the victims of the whole North Korean regime. So it's one of these things that it doesn't surprise me, and yet it could be false. Be interesting to see. The Washington Post, Mark Fisher writes a 5-point takedown of the story that almost settles the question. The fact that the Western media have so widely accepted the story, they would reject it if it came out of any other country, tells us a lot about how North Korea is covered and how it's misunderstood, he writes. Fisher, who says that the Western media have an incentive to cover these kinds of bizarre stories as they generate a lot of attention. He quotes the NKN News organization editor Chad O'Carroll as saying, as you know, North Korean stories tend to get a lot of hits, so it's easy to see why editors will want to pursue these stories. It would make things easier, writes Slate's Joshua Keating, if North Korea government commented publicly on the stories, but it's called the Hermit Kingdom for a reason, right? So given the internet's insatiable appetite for weird North Korean stories, it becomes a bit of a free-for-all, he writes. The North Korean government does so many bizarre things, we can confirm that a few of these dubious rumors might surely be true, right? Sure. And hey, it makes for a compelling, albeit macabre, tale. Yeah. So, it's one of these things. I mean, is he going to come out? Is he going to come out and confirm that he fed? I mean, in a way, right now, this guy is untouchable. If he's taken out whatever power structure might have existed underneath him or around him that might have been plotting against him, it is done now. And that's the thing. If you go back to earlier this year, back when they were threatening to strike, what was it, Austin, Texas? Got to get Dabu 7 on that. Yeah, if they were talking about that, and of course a lot of the pundits that were in the American media were saying, no, 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 no. The real person pulling the strings in North Korea was his uncle, right, Jan Song Thiek. So that was sort of the perceived power structure that was existing, that this guy Kim Jong Il was not really the guy pulling the strings and not the real power source. Well, he is undoubtedly now. So we know that at very least. Whether he fed his uncle to the dogs or, stripped him. Well, he did strip him naked. According to the story, he stripped him naked and they fed him. And they watched it for an hour. That's the story. Pretty crazy, though. I mean, man, oh man. But I've seen videos. For instance, one video or a couple of videos that I've seen is the North Koreans like to pit animals, much like the Romans did. So they will pit like lions against bears and stuff like that. And there has been videos that have surfaced of that. So that is a part of the culture of the elite. When you can do anything, imagine you had a state and you weren't particularly sane, or you were a psychopath and you had a state and you could do whatever you want to anyone you want within that state. If you are a demented freak, well, there's really no limits to what you might do to your own people, to your own family. So it's one of these tales. I mean, it's got to be taken with a pinch of salt, of course, and you have to look at where the sources are. I'm actually impressed by the BBC for actually giving a sort of unbiased opinion of this. Saying that we got to be skeptical. Isn't that nice to actually have that in the mainstream media, telling us to be skeptical about a story about someone that they've painted on so many occasions as being a complete nut and a danger. Don't forget, North Korea was labeled by George W. Bush as being part of the axis of evil. So North Korea is definitely within the sights of the West and is one of these countries that they very much want to destabilize. So anyways, it's a very crazy story. I saw it. I nearly spit out my coffee, but it didn't surprise me. It's shocking to read the headline, and then, of course, once you sort of digest it a little bit, then you realize, well, perhaps it's bullshit, perhaps it's true. Even if it is true, what does it change? Probably nothing. It's just one more smear against the totalitarian, crazy communist regime of North Korea. And it's one of these things, as the BBC reporter here says, it gets hits. People are always looking for North Korean stories. So I guess if we're ever going to learn the truth, there'll have to be some sort of video and some sort of confirmation from the hierarchy within North Korea. And don't hold your breath. But then again, they might like to use it. These guys are pretty crazy. So I'd love to hear your comments. If you have any more information regarding it, please leave your comments below, and I wish you all the best.